Okay, so here's a couple where I just wanted to go through and work with you on understanding the difference between identifying the x-intercept and the y-intercept. So I'm going to jump back a couple slides just so I can review it or go through with you what that means. Okay, so y-intercept we should be very comfortable with. The y-intercept is where it crosses the y line, and you guys have been identifying that already. Well, now what they're going to do is sometimes they'll have us graph a line, and then they'll ask us for what the x-intercept is. Well, the only difference is instead of identifying where it crossed on the y line, we're going to identify where it crosses on the x line. Now, when they do these, whenever they give these to you, they will be like perfect numbers. So it's not, you're never going to have one where it falls in between two numbers. It'll fall exactly on a number on that line. So when I look at this one, if I look at my red line, on the red line, the y-intercept is right here. So it was at +6. And on the red line also, my x-intercept happens to fall right here on +3. So that would be my x-intercept. Okay, the purple line. So on my purple line, my y-intercept is right here. And that's at -6. And my x-intercept is just where it crosses the negative line. So that's right here. That's at -8. So that's just identifying x and y intercepts. So we're going to go ahead and practice a couple of those where they're going to have us actually graph the equation. Get to the right slide. Whoops. I went a few too far. Okay, so when I go through and I look at these, first of all, I'm noticing that I have a decimal number for my slope. Okay, so anytime you have this happen, it doesn't mean that we can't graph it. And no, we don't have to go through and figure out what 0.4 is. What we're going to do on this one is we're going to have to change this into its fraction form. So when I look at that, I see it as -1 4/10 originally. And you won't get these very often, but every so often they will. And I always have kids that get really confused on these because they're used to either a fraction or a whole number slope. Okay, so now when I look at this, I could reduce that down just so I don't have to work with such big numbers and graphing. And when I do that, I could reduce this down to -1 2/5. Okay, so now I'm going to have to actually change that to its improper fraction. So remember how to do that is we go 5 times 1 is 5 plus 2 is 7. So now I have y equals -7/5 x minus 1. So now we can go through and actually work on, let's go ahead and graph that. And then the question is asking, identify the x-intercept. So yeah, we're combining things that are a little more difficult and asking a new question. So I'm going to start at -1, put my dot. So -1 is right here. And then my slope is -7/5. So I'm going to go down 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and over 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there's my second dot. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and put my line through this. And hopefully, bear with me because I got to straighten out my line a little bit. It should fall through one of my numbers there on the x. Okay, so when I look at this, here's my x. Here's where it's crossing the x. So my final answer on this would be the x-intercept, because they wanted us to graph it, but they also want us to tell the x-intercept equals -1. Okay, and it's not always going to be the same as the y-intercept. It just so happens that it did on this one. Okay, so let's try another one. Okay, so this time, oh man, once again, they're going ahead and giving us a more complex equation, but they're asking us a new question. So it's still finding the x-intercept. So I need to get rid of this line really quick and erase my graph. Okay, so once again, we have to work to get y by itself. So +4, goodbye, +4. So now I have y equals -3/5 x plus 4. Okay, so we go to +4, put our dot, and then we follow the slope. It's -3/5. So down 3, 1, 2, 3/5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's my other line, or my other dot. And now I'll go ahead and connect those and see where it crosses the X-intercept. Okay, so when I look at that, it crosses the X-intercept right here. So that would be at positive 7. So our X-intercept equals 7. All right, so let's try one of those independently, unless it gives us a funky, no. You guys are gonna go ahead and pause your video and work your way through this one. Okay, so you're gonna have to solve for y first of all. And then once you solve it, graph and tell me what your X-intercept is. So find the X-intercept. So go ahead and pause your video, work your way through the graph, and then identify where it crosses the X line. Okay, so you should have ended up with your X-intercept being -3. Now, if your line was slightly off, it may have looked like it was between -3 and -4. But I would know from your answers that you had approximately done it right. So this is where it's really important that you're trying to get those dots perfectly lined up when you're doing your straight edge. All right, well, I think that's it for this part. Let me double check. Yep, because that's another day. So that's it for this lesson. So good luck with this one. Keep plugging away at those. And remember, always start with your Y-intercept and then follow your rise over run.